We're back again, and now we're going to look at another, uh, how can I say it? Another belief that people have that, well, I'll let you pose the question there since you
Okay.
so
Okay.
eloquently did it. And then we'll play with that. We'll go
Okay.
take a look at it.
Okay. Okay. The next topic that was also I had to face and learn how to work with is what I call the poisonous and a dangerous spiritual teaching or knowledge on a personal level, and I had confronted and I had to evaluate, and I had my spirit guides showed me some signs that allowed me to identify, well, I should not deal with this knowledge because it is at this moment in my evolution, my growth is dangerous and poisonous to me, and I might be needed to look at this information at a later time or not at all. So for me, that was a profound experience, understanding that. And I wish to share and also to investigate on other people's journey, growth, path, whatever, okay? How can we distinguish, let's say, identify spiritual teaching that are poisonous or dangerous to us at that specific point in time. Okay? And I had a friend in that meeting, gathering, and we spoke about the Israeli Orthodox religion and so forth, and being observant Jews and so forth. And I told him, you know, being observant Jew with all the restrictions and frameworks of the religions, it can be beneficial to people and a certain level. And it can be harmful to people on different levels. So it's not a decisive answer. Should I follow and should I not follow? It depends on your spiritual orientation and growth at that perfect moment.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah, that's.
Yes.
I'm gonna have to play with this with you. Okay, since you brought up something, so I'm gonna play with this with you. So when you said about the strictness of the Orthodox Jews, what's the rules and whatever else. So in for some, like you said, for some people, that it's going to be beneficial for them to have those particular rules and strictness and so forth. And then you said in others, it would be dangerous. I want to understand that, because how does it become dangerous at this point in time? And how is it beneficial in other times?
Okay.
Say the strictness of the, how Jewish order goes and so forth, just as an example.
Okay. Okay. Some people, in order to get organized and focused on their spiritual path, need to be very, very strict and disciplined.
Yeah.
Okay. And afterwards, when they grow spiritually, they can shift away. But in the very beginning, in order to be focused and start the spiritual growth, they need to be, let's say, handheld on the path. Okay.
Okay.
And for others that, let's say, were grown and were brought up in this very restrictive society, okay, staying there and observing the rules, okay, it's poisonous to their souls, because they are suffering each day from especially the women, okay, they are depressed, and there's dramatically higher rate of depression on with ultra-Orthodox women in the age of 20 to 40 when they are most fertile. Okay, so there are very strict religion expectations for women to be productive. Productive means produce more offsprings.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it has a spiritual and social and a psychological toll on many women. This could be poisonous to them. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you engage with that?
Got it.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. I like that. Okay. So when we're talking about, somebody getting started and they have to be handheld through it, like you take any particular religion. If they
Yes.
want to learn that particular religion and they want to be experiencing that type of religion and what it benefits they would get or what experiences they would get, and they want to really go deep into it and not go off the path, then yeah, they may require a little bit more guidance, a little bit more direction, a little bit more, hand-holding, like you said, for them to be disciplined to follow that. But in essence, that's an opportunity for them to jump deep into that pool of religiosity, or whatever you want to call it, right?
Yeah.
And that is more just for an experience. It's not the fact that they're going to really, they're going to join that religion and hold that order of some sort, that they're going to be much more spiritually advanced. Most times, a lot of spiritual advancements that they gain is what's outside of it rather than what's inside. But you need to get inside at times just to kind of experience before you can look at the outside.
Mm-hmm.
So can you say that's beneficial? Yeah, if they want to experience that part, yeah, by following through and being held hand and so forth, to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Also about being experiencing the fearful aspects of the religion.
Yes.
Especially the Catholic.
Correct.
Which is based on fear.
Yeah, and what happens with that is going into that depth of fear and feeling all that aspect of it, then you get that side of you that does not resonate with you, because your higher self is saying, this is not you, this is not how it works, and so forth. But if we're going to go deep in there, let's feel the opposite before we can actually start questioning and moving forward. So let's get into that, lose ourselves in that religion or lose ourselves in these belief systems, and then find ourselves accordingly. Now, is it absolutely necessary? No, but in essence, depending on where you're coming from, and it's going to be beneficial for you to get lost. And this is what we do. Most of us get lost in our world, get lost in our thoughts, get lost in a protocol of a way of life and so forth. And then we start questioning things. It's like, no, this doesn't resonate, doesn't feel like an alignment anymore. It's just, and then you step out and you start questioning and looking with brighter eyes and be able to see that there's much more than what those rules applied, and the same thing much more than the religion applied.
Yeah, only if you want to advance. Some people are so much enjoying the social structure of the society within the religion. Okay? So they have more benefits, psychological benefits and social benefits. They prefer not to doubt and indulge all their life in that society. And
Correct.
it's also acceptable and appreciated.
Absolutely. And they basically, from even a soul perspective, they have chosen to be able to play that role for themselves and for others, right? To say, okay, well, this time we want to experience being that, not being out the box. We want to be inside the box, feel every aspect of the box and play with it, because this is how we gain from it. Absolutely. Right. So yeah, there are many reasons why we would go in there, and why holding and the discipline, and dressing a certain way, going to certain rituals, going and doing all that stuff
Mm-hmm.
is beneficial for them.
Right.
Now, then comes to the other part where you were saying that how could it being poisonous to others that are feeling stuck in the whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, like you were saying, the women at their fertile time have expectations religiously that they have to be producing lots of offsprings, and bring them up a certain way, and
Mm-hmm.
dress a certain way, act a certain way, question not to question anything, and so forth, and actually have very little say in the matter, and being
Mm-hmm.
governed by, say, the male representation of
Yes,
the family, and
absolutely.
so forth, right?
Absolutely. Disempowered, absolutely disempowered.
Yes, yes. So in essence, there are many that will do the same thing. They would just say, "Yeah, this is what I want to experience this part, and I'm okay with it." And they're gonna go into the depth of it. They're not going to question it. They're not going to go into depression. They're going to
Mm-hmm.
feel totally perfect in there.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's
Yes.
the others that actually start to have a twinge of understanding, where they're starting to question things and going, no, this doesn't feel right for me. I don't want to be limited. I don't want to be producing a lot of the offsprings. I don't want to be under the the authority of my husband, or from the male authority, or under
Mm-hmm.
all these rules that come from the Torah and whatever else, other
Mm-hmm.
stuff. And
Yes.
then at that point, if they feel themselves stuck, they'll go through a phase of feeling depressed, because they feel hopeless. They feel like, I have no other choice. I
Mm-hmm.
feel that this has been destined to me, or it's like my
Mm-hmm.
calling, and I'm not liking it, or something of that nature. Is it really that poisonous, or is it another opportunity to get into the depth of it and start questioning things, and then of course even having that experience of depression, and then at some point having even a different point of realization, is like, no, I don't want to play this part, and then start to make changes in their life, and how they accept the rules that are being mandated, or something of that nature. So it's still a catalyst of some sort. It may present some what you can call negative experiences for a period of time, until they get empowered by themselves. So that this empowerment is becomes, to the depth of it, can become the catalyst for empowerment.
Okay. Follow.
Because in
Yes.
essence, if I feel I have no say, and this and that, but there's that conflict from inside, and this is where a lot of depression comes in, is because you're having a conflict from a higher perspective and the ego perspective, and you feel that there's that tug from both sides. One saying, well, we got to stay in the system, we got to stay in this organization, we got to
Mm-hmm.
play our role, because this is, we're a woman, and we're Jewish, we're this, we're that, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is. And then there's this authority of God, or whatever it is there, that mandated this, and we have no say, and so forth. That's one part, and the ego mind plays with that artificial intelligence,
Right.
and so forth. And the higher self is saying, okay, you didn't come here to get stuck totally. You did for a while, but now we need to start questioning things. We need to start looking at things. We need to start seeing that there's much more to this. You need to start feeling uncomfortable being stuck like this, because that uncomfortableness will also force you to evaluate things, and you start to start to connect that other aspect of yourself, so that you can have that empowerment a part of you coming through, so that you can actually start changing your reality. And how, say, because a woman, you know at this point, for example, in the example you were given, if they feel that, you know, it's an honor to be a woman and to be Jewish and to have offsprings and to follow the rules,
Mm-hmm.
because that's a gift from God, then they feel
Yes.
empowered in that.
Yes.
If
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a great aspect of them. Another
Mm-hmm.
one will come in and look at that, and they feel that they need to follow that protocol, but then at some point the protocol doesn't match them. It's like, no, this doesn't feel like an honor. This feels more of a sacrifice. This feels more of a giving my life away, and that I have
Mm-hmm.
no say in the matter. I can't even make my own decision, and so forth. So that's the other side of it, where it's, it gives them the opportunity to say, okay, well, now I want to just to look at another viewpoint so I can step out of this, because in essence, a woman that starts to awaken to that, and their husband is, reading out, "Hey, I'm the authority here, and this is what God says," and whatever it is, and they say, "You know something, you can play with this, but I'm not engaging in that, and I'm choosing from this point to start really making my own decisions, and this is that." And the husband could react and respond in a certain way, but if the wife decides we're not going there, and the reason I'm saying even that, because I have a Jewish family that the wife is awakening and the husband is like totally, orthodox in every aspect, but she's awakening from that, and she's now finally in her life saying, "I don't want to abide to any of those rules anymore. I still respect you, husband. I honor you, and you do whatever you want to do with the religion and
Yes.
everything else, but I'm going to start looking at something else." So, I mean, she happens to be a client, so I'm working with her to break out of the guilt and the mindset, because it's heavy laden with guilt and so
Yeah.
forth.
Yeah.
I can't break out of this. So I'm helping her break out of the guilt and everything else, so that she can be more empowered and decide, do I want to participate, not participate? What do I want to do and not do at this point in time? And what steps it? Like when I asked her the question, "Do you see yourself still being with your husband?" She goes, "Yeah, I don't see any reason why not to at this point, but I don't see myself being under his rules anymore. And my husband, if he doesn't accept that, then it's his choice. I'm not going to force him to stay with me. But I'm not, because her husband said to her, believe it or not, said to her is that, every woman that starts to question things and starts to look at things this way end up divorcing their husbands, right?" And he goes, "I don't want to see that happening." And he goes, "No, don't be concerned about that, because in essence, that's not my thought. My thought is that I want to see more than what religion has taught me and what, the authority stuff and everything else, because I want to be what I feel inside. There's more to me than that, playing that role, right?" So, but that's her thing, so in essence, she's not looking at breaking the relationship. She's trying to enhance it, but also to have the power to be herself in it, right? The husband's having a bit of a challenge with it, but he's got to also say, well, I have to give her freedom too, regardless what, he's brought up, that, and then in a sense, the other thing too is when, in communicating with the husband, he's almost a little bit relieved that he doesn't have to play the authority role and have the responsibility of what his wife does or doesn't do. It's like, well, I actually like the fact that she's making up her own mind, because I don't want to carry the weight of being the authority figure in the house anymore. I've done it for a long, long time. And I'd rather be, I want to do my studies. I want to do, whatever I do, but I don't want to be responsible for her like I was before, where, I have to keep her on track and I have to be responsible for what she says, doesn't do, or anything of that nature. So there's a bit of a relief for him too in that regard. So in essence, is there really poisonous rules or thoughts or spiritual things? On one hand, you can say, well, it can be poisonous, but the thing is, it's never a poison that will kill you. It's always a poison that actually will act up your immune system, that will make you stronger. So in actual, it will trigger you to be able to, wait a minute here, I'm going to make my own decision. I'm going to move forward from this. So in essence, and I find it too, even misinformation, there's a lot of information out there that's totally skewed, okay? And when I say totally skewed, it is purposely put together to bring people in a confused state, okay? But that, when people say, well, what do you think of that? And I go, well, it's a good tool too, because skewed information is the opportunity for somebody to get lost in it for a little while, but then to start questioning it themselves, and really now, instead of giving their power away to something or some other belief system or some entity or some, what do you call it, channeling or something of that nature, or deity of some sort, that they get the opportunity to empower themselves and say, okay, really, I'm not going to buy into that anymore. I want to move a different direction. So I said that then when they actually hear something that's more in alignment, they'll be less questioning and more using that self-guidance to go through it. So in a way, that poison is actually plays a role in a good way too.
Okay.
What you call poison.
Okay.
Is, so
Okay.
like even the system, like you look at our system, the system is totally backwards. It's upside down. The systems that we have in our monetary, our schooling systems, our medical systems, our religions, our governmental, and all of that stuff, they're all working on totally off track in regards to what true nature is all about. Okay. Everything is messed up, confused, and so forth. So somebody awakening turns around and says, oh, those are the bad people, and we got to fix this, and we got to fight this, and so forth. But like I said earlier in one of our other interviews, that we're going back in and using the same weaponry, the same energies,
Right.
which basically just gets us lost in there. But that's okay too for a little while. Then we come to the realization, because you notice when people are asleep, they're asleep. When they start to awaken, and when I say awaken, is starting to come more realization, the first response the ego likes to play with is demonize what you start to figure out. And then
I call it rage.
Rage, yeah. Demonize it, fight it, go into rage, and so forth. And then what you're accentuating is they're the victimizer, I'm the victim, and now the victim has to fight the victimizer. Right? So you're polarizing further. But you'll notice as people become more aware and start to awaken even further, they stop judging and they see the perfection of their presence, of being there. And now they create a movement for further awareness so that it actually makes this obsolete so it can disappear. Instead of going to fight against it, we're going to bring it to the level of obsolescence through a higher level of consciousness and realization that we don't have to play that game anymore. So how do you get rid of even a religion? I'm just going to use that, not that I'm telling you to do that.
Okay.
How do you put a religion out of business? You make it obsolete. How do you make it obsolete? When you start to realize that you don't need religion to realize who you are. Because a religion's telling you who you are, and it gives you rules to limit you, control you, and so forth. But that's good, because in a way, then you feel more stuck. And then at some point, you're going to say, no, I don't want to be stuck anymore. I'm going to step out of this completely. And I'm going to see that I am this free person that have my own capacity to create whatever I do. And I don't have to have the relationship with some deity the way it's been dictated. I have that connection with my higher self, sourceness, or whatever you want to call it, on my terms. And then the whole thing changes. So what I see is from sleep to rebelness, or like you said, anger, or what did you call it? Rage. And then the peace comes back, and now you make a movement so that you actually create a change in the system without fighting the system. You make it obsolete, and you don't give it any more power, and more people give it no more power. And when people are not giving power to anything, it just goes away because it's not reinforced. So like when people say, well, how do you stop war? And I said, you don't stop war with more war. You stop war with consciousness, because in consciousness, you realize that war is not necessary and that you don't have to participate. And the thing is, you can't have a war if nobody participates.
Right.
So even if the so-called authority, government, or anything says, oh, we got to go fight and bomb these people over here and so forth. If nobody turns around and says, we're not going, what are they going to do? It's dead. It's finished.
Right.
It's like, we're not participating. We're not going to get into the jets and go over there. We're not going to get into the tanks. We're not going to.
They're going to get robots. AI.
Yeah,
machines.
you can get robots. But I can tell you, robots are programmed by somebody, and the government doesn't program it. They hire some programmers, and the programmers come to the awareness and says, I'm not programming that to go and do and destroy other people. So
it starts to happen in Google. People in Google start to leave the office. There was some in the mainstream media. It was noted that some engineers left projects that Google did with DoD that were controversial for them, and the whole department, the whole project went under because people just didn't agree spiritually, morally with that project.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. That's what I say to people. Is like, you want to change your world, you change the consciousness that we play with, and you'll see the world changes. Because when you see that our natural state is cooperation, working together to create an environment for everybody that is flourishing, then you don't do what we do now, where it's competition, where it's, you know, taking advantage of other people, or, you know, keeping people in lack, and so that some others have more, or anything of that nature. You take all that out of the equation. The whole idea that you can actually own anything goes out the window, because in fact, how could you own anything? How can you control one individual control anything? You know, it's basically, it belongs to every single soul that's on the planet when they are on the planet. The moment they leave, they're not even here anymore. So in fact, they're not, you know, they're not in control of it. And it's always shared. Everything is in that way. And we don't have to keep, you know, doing things the same way. I mean, the only reason we're still using fossil fuels is because there's industries saying that we need to keep it that way, because we need to have jobs, and we need to do this and that, and we need to make profits and whatever else. And new technologies are not brought out because of the fact that we want to keep this old industry in place. Well, the old industry was obsolete before the 1900s. You know, so it was never even required. But in essence, we didn't get that. And now we're starting to figure it out now. And that's why it's, you know, going where it's going at this point in time. People are starting to question and making changes. All right, so I'll start it again. All right, sorry about that little interruption. And so anyways, in regards, I mean, we're holding on to various industries and so forth because of the fact that we hold on to the idea that it has to stay there because of, you know, it proves jobs and this and that and so forth. And then a lot of the new technologies and so forth are disregarded because we need to keep this old system in place. But when we get to the awareness point that we are, you know, to play the game in a way where everybody benefits, including the planet, the animal kingdom, and so forth, then we will look at certain things that we do and say, well, how does this fit in here that is conducive to support well-being for everything? So then the collaboration comes in and say, okay, let's work together to find solutions or find better ways to create a sustainable system for everyone to flourish, not just small individuals, right? And the same thing. So that's kind of what happens us when we come to the point where we start to become aware, and we're not supporting the old system. Then the old systems start to fade away, and the new systems come in, and the new systems are now flexible. Because if you look at a lot of the old systems is rigid. They stick to the status quo from whenever it was put together. They're still doing everything the same. Where, you know, anything that we do now has to always be continuously upgraded in such a way that it's always more harmonious, more balanced, more conducive to where we're going as a group, and how it best meets the needs of having this human experience on the planet, right? So that's what consciousness does. And that's, you know, it's the awareness of, you know, we're having a human experience. We're much more than a human experience. Planet Earth is a playground. Planet Earth is a beautiful playground which has a lot of other sentient beings and so forth that experience with us and so forth. And how can we create a harmonious way of experiencing where we're not going to be in polarity and destruction mode and all of that stuff that we've been playing this much? I'm not judging the fact that, you know, we've played the game this far. The game has been way overdue, but at the same time, you know, it's given us the opportunity to experience what we needed to experience, but now it's time to move on. And that's what we're, you know, looking at.
I agree. I would like to give a different angle to this question about, let's talk about evaluating new spiritual information. And because I'm on the path for, let's say, for more than 30 years, I I developed sense of how to evaluate distorted information, distorted and I would say poisonous
Okay.
and debilitating and controlling information.
Mhm.
But I'm not confident about my stance and my compass. Okay? And I would like to consult with you. How would you suggest I should evaluate without me telling you what's my ideas? Okay? What's your ideas of evaluating spiritual knowledge to be empowering and to be correct for me at this moment, which could change in a different moment?
Mhm. Well, what I've always looked at and I've always used, and in regards to using as a compass, like you said, to navigate through a lot of information that comes through, um, is basically I feel it out in a sense where if information comes in and it's questionable, then I usually ask myself, what's questionable about it? You know, is it polarized, first of all? Is it opinionated? Is it somehow directed from one particular source? Like you can even have something coming from a being from another planet, for example.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't always mean that it is the absolute essence of truth. And I don't say truth per se, but more accuracy is up there. It really, you know, I go through it, sense it, feel it, and connect with it. And then, of course, I have my own guidance system that I can tune into and
Right.
really use that to see how much of that is accurate, valuable, beneficial, utilizable, and anything of that nature, right? Um, for example, I get a lot of times people channel stuff and they send me
Mm-hmm.
a video. Well,
Yeah.
listen, I heard this channeling. It makes a lot of sense, but I don't know 100% if it's accurate or something of that nature, right? Now, for
Right.
me, because I'm really good at this, because of many, many years of experience and the know-how, I just tune into
Yes.
the energy and I can tell if it's accurate or not. But if
Mm-hmm.
I listen to it, I can feel it. Some stuff will, yeah, that resonates, that feels right on the
Mm-hmm.
mark and everything else. And other things is, okay, where's that one coming from? Because in essence, it's questionable. You feel it's questionable. You know it's questionable because in
Mm-hmm.
essence, you see that there's either limits, there's fear tactics, or there is rules of some sort, like even universal laws, or you know, spiritual laws. Well, there is no
Mm-hmm.
laws. I know that's going to be scary saying that.
Mm-hmm.
There are guidelines, but guidelines are for people while they're still learning how to navigate. So you need to have some guidelines.
Okay.
Once you've learned how to navigate, you don't have guidelines because they're not necessary because you use your own navigational system. But until you get your own navigational system, there are guidelines. But there are no rules and laws and stuff like that because the laws have been put there so that people, because they respond to the idea that there's a law and they have to
Mm-hmm.
obey a law, then they'll say it, call it a law because nobody questions the law because it's a law, right? Because we were programmed to believe that. Now, if you take a little kid and you say that's the law, and they go, what the hell is a law? I don't even care about laws. I do whatever I want to do. But if you scare them enough, teach them enough, mold his shape and brainwash, whatever else, they're going to start abiding to a law and they don't
Right.
question the law anymore in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Because even as a kid, my parents used to say, well, there was spiritual laws or what they call religious laws. And then there was, you know, other laws. And I said, like, who made the shit up? Who made it up? Like, that was my always the question, who made it up?
Yeah.
Right? Because as far as I was concerned, there was no laws. Somebody made it up somewhere, and then they stamped it and said, "Well, that's the law," right?
Right.
So, uh, so there's none of that. So when you're saying, when we're looking at and so forth, and say, "Well, if it starts dictating things," how does it serve? Okay, some people it may serve because they're not ready to be on their own, and then that may be beneficial for them for the time being. Like you were saying
Hmm.
before, you know, you can get really deep into a religion until you get the gist of the religion, and then you're going to
Hmm.
possibly find out there's more to that than just that religion. Uh, so in essence, it's the same thing with anything that we may have, and say, okay, how does this serve me? And how would it serve the collective at this point in time if we took that as valuable information that is beneficial? Then the other thing I do is, especially when they say, well, you know, God this, God that, or whatever it is, and I'm going,
Hmm.
okay, as if I'm source, pure love, non-judgmental, pure potentiality, created, would I create that? No. But would I utilize it for the time being when people are still trying to figure themselves out? Yeah, I can give that as a guideline of some sort, or share it through somebody down the
Hmm.
line. But Source wouldn't have made those guidelines. It would be other representatives along the way that says, oh, we better have some guidelines, right?
Hmm.
So in essence, when you look at it that way, and you say, okay, how does this serve or doesn't serve or whatever it is at this
Hmm.
point in time? So that's what I use as information. But then I also connect with the energy of it. Okay. So what I mean by that, when
What do
I
you mean by
hear,
that?
when somebody is speaking and sharing information,
Hmm.
I can tune into the information and I can feel where it's coming from. If it's coming from a fear-based, if it's coming from non-questioning based, if it's coming from shared ideas that is not concrete or clear. Um, um, so then it opens it up. So, okay, there's got to be more to this, and I need to look at it more before I would even adopt this part of it. Because I'm not
Okay.
easy to jump into things unless it totally is like, yep, that resonates 100%. I got that. Okay. And that's how it is. But so in essence, I tap into it and I feel from a heart perspective, how does that make me feel here? Does it feel in resonance or not? Or does it feel like it's trying to stimulate something that is not highly beneficial?
Hmm.
And then I look at it, I plug somebody else in and say, okay, if somebody else is listening to this, what would they get out of it? How would they benefit or something like that? So I tune into that. So if you were saying something, I can feel your
Hmm.
energy if it's coming from fear, if it's coming from, you know, just the fact that I can't question something, just because your energy that you emit when you're talking and how you're glowing and so forth
Hmm.
has a lot to say what your belief is about it, what your energy is about it, and if it's coming from
Hmm.
a truly authentic place, right?
Yeah.
Because there are times people say, well, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I go in there, that doesn't resonate. But that's where are they coming from? Oh,
Hmm.
okay. They have to have rules. They have to have this for them because they're coming
Right.
from that point. So I'm not going to discount it that the information is incorrect. It's correct for them. It may not be totally because it's a much lower level of consciousness, and I may be here looking for it, like your stuff that you learned when you started 30 years ago. You were looking for more of the basic foundation, and then later on you looked for more and more and more and
Hmm.
more because you wanted to understand more. You wanted to get into the depth of it. This is why we're having this conversation, because we want to go
Right.
into the depth of it, right? But at that
Right.
point, maybe you weren't ready for that depth. You know, a lot of people aren't, right? So in essence, this is kind of how you develop accordingly. So, uh, you know, that's how you use it. Um,
Hmm.
that's how I do it. This is how
Okay.
I've taught other people to do it. Go with it. Now, the resonance stuff is interesting. Okay. I don't want to twist your things around, but I have to share this. Okay.
Okay. Please do.
It's a mind twister. All right. Have you had things truly resonate for you at one point in time, and then later on it did not resonate with you anymore?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which
Okay.
religion? Of course, we just use that
Okay.
being observant and dismissing all the mitzvot, all the rules
Exactly.
that were fear-based.
Yes. So the thing is, the reason we may resonate with something now and then not resonate later is because there's a necessity for you to resonate so that you can have that experience to get into the depth of it.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody says, oh, I have to go into religion, for example, just we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about that. And because that's where I feel I need my guidance from, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it resonates for them to go listen to this person reading from a book, dictating their lessons or whatever it is, because that's what they need right at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
But later on, they start outgrowing it. They start to realize there's more to it, and now it doesn't resonate with me. So then the ego mind will say, well, oh, we were wrong. We can't trust our resonating because we resonated with that, and now it doesn't resonate with anymore. How can we trust that we're going to have, we're going to resonate with the right thing? So we can't trust resonating. The point is, what resonates is for that time. And we have to be okay to be open to it to change, because your experience is going to change. Your consciousness is going to change, so that what your soul said, yeah, let's resonate with this right now because this is the path we need to go. Then later on, it's like, we're done with this path. Now it doesn't have to resonate anymore. But we're not here to judge it either, because that was our training wheels to get us there. So now we have had that experience. We've wrapped it up. Now we can go into something else, right?
Right, right.
So
right.
when I do that, I always ask the question, am I resonating because I need to have this experience, or am I resonating because it is absolute, the highest level of consciousness and truth about this, right? And usually I get the answer by just tuning into it, and I go, oh, okay, this is something I need to resonate for a part of an experience. But now I don't have much of that ever again anymore, because now it's more the ultimate or nothing, right? But
Right.
even that, the ultimate, it has levels of ultimate too. Okay?
Of course.
Because some of the things I have access to, I cannot share. My soul will not let me share. Only because people are not ready to hear that yet.
Okay.
Okay? Because it's too mind-blowing, and it will confuse them, because they're still learning from it. What I share now, I could not share years ago. Absolutely, Duty. I can tell you
It's
right now.
it's dangerous.
Well, that's
Some people it's dangerous.
yeah, exactly. So I have people that have followed my work for years, and they say, why am I hearing this for the first time now? Why didn't you tell us before? And I go, you think you were ready to hear this before? I said, there was times I was excited to share it, but my higher self kept saying, no, they're not ready. You can't say this. And I can't. And it will stop me. You know how it stops me? It gives me temporary mind wipes. You know what that means? It
No.
stops, all of a sudden you have the thought and you go, oh, I want to share this. And then all of a sudden it's gone. Totally. You can't even remember what it was
Oh.
for a period of time. Then it comes back, but and then you hear from your higher self saying, you try that again, I'll wipe it again. Okay, so you don't go there.
Okay.
Now I
I
don't
call
even,
it I call it interrupted or cut thought train.
yes. So that's done purposely at times because of the
Mm-hmm.
fact. Now there's two types of that. One is done
Yes.
by your higher self. The other one's done by your artificial intelligence, which is basically you're about to say something that's going to be, mind-blowing and beneficial at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And then your ego mind, no, we can't go there, or taps into the matrix, and the matrix gives you what you call a mind fart or a mind
Mm-hmm.
blip, or like you called it there, so that all of a sudden you can't access it for a period of time, because it doesn't want you to share that higher part. But you can tell the difference, because one, it startles you and so forth. The other one is from here, it's very subtle, and it's just basically, we're not going there, and it just doesn't let you formulate the thoughts. The thought's not
Mm-hmm.
gone, you just can't put words to it. So it's like, I was going to say something, I still see it there, but I can't word it now. But you know what it is. So now I'm
Yes.
really good at it, so I pay attention right away. If it says no, it's no. I don't try to push it, so it doesn't
Okay.
have to have the mind wipe. But I can say the last retreat I did for 5 days and an evening,
Yes.
there was a few times I had that happen, because I got so overzealous about sharing stuff that I started to go beyond what my soul was going to allow me to talk about, and then it
Okay.
would stop me. Or I would get the message, no, you can't say that. And then I would let them know I can't say that, right? So,
Okay.
but that's just because, so that's why there are levels of what you can call ultimate consciousness or truth or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But, some of the stuff that I have access to may not really apply for planet Earth. And when I say that is because in planet Earth, we are working still in a certain range, and the humans here work in a certain range. If you're going to start talking about something outside of its range, it just will change the way you experience your human experience here. So in essence, it has to be still in alignment. So there's that part of it too. I mean, I've come to that realization. So anyways, that's what I can share with you of how I do it with regards to knowing what is and what isn't. Now, what's interesting, I have to say one last thing, Duty. As you can tell, I have all this stuff coming in. What I find is I don't mind listening to stuff that's not accurate.
Me too. Me too.
Because, and you might have the same experience, look at it this way. You're listening to a talk and they're saying some things that are off. Automatically, my soul says, no, it's this way. It gives me the correct version of it right away. So it's like, it's this, but then you have from your higher self, no, it's this. And it's like, okay, that makes sense. The other thing is, it's saying this much. There's other pieces missing. And my higher self will fill the pieces in along the way. So I love it because I love it. It's like, I love listening. Because sometimes Kimberly says to me, well, how did you feel about listening to all that stuff? Most of the stuff was totally inaccurate. And I said, I loved it because in essence, I was having another whole dialogue with me because I was getting all the blanks filled in and I was getting all the correct information plugged in and so forth at the same time. So not that I purposely do that, but sometimes that happens where, you know, I'm listening to something because somebody wants me to listen to it. And I get ideas and I start jotting it down and say, okay, I'm going to have to do a talk on this. I'm going to have to do a talk on that because in essence, you know, people have a belief that it's one way when it's really the other way. And that's it. So a lot of the conversation we're having now, some of it were adjustments that came up along the way when we were, and even when you make a statement, for example, you say, well, this versus that and so forth, my higher self steps in and says, well, okay, let's give them this part and this part and this part because this part will fill in all the pieces. So that's how it works with me. Okay. Now, anyways, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. I am not satisfied from this answer.
Okay.
Because it's not specific, it's personal.
Right.
It's your personal guidance and as I did, and I was expecting some moral values and some really checklist. What's about this? And you mentioned polarities and see whether it is polarized. Okay. Whether this message is polarized and fear-based and so forth. I think it's very important for the audience to understand what you meant by polarized and how to identify polarized information and how to identify fear-based information.
Okay, that's very good. I'm glad that you brought that up. So what polarized means is that when you're listening to the message, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad, this is coming from a certain perspective, and if you do this, it gives you a negative response or whatever it is. So it's very polarized. It's saying one way versus another way, and it's all of that stuff. Okay? So when it's coming from a non-polarized, it's saying, okay, this is what we're playing with. These are some of the things that we have the opportunity to play with or something of that nature, but it's not polarized. The other part is fear-based. Well, if you don't do this, this will happen to you. And if you don't follow this protocol or something like that, then you will be demonized or you will be taken by entities or you will be doing this and you will be doing that. And it's very, you know, right, wrong, good, bad, but with intensities that bring in fear. Okay. And then that becomes controlling. So you feel controlled. You feel like, oh my God, I can't have that thought. I can't do this. I can't do that, and so forth. Right. For example, you know, even when you get information from beings, you know, coming in or aliens of some sort, you know, if it's polarized, it's like, yeah, we're going to take out all these these negative cabals, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that, incriminate, torture, this and that, whatever it is, you can see that that information is not, it's very skewed information because it's very polarized, and it's playing with our operating system, which is right, wrong, good, bad, judgment, comparison, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a cue that it's not coming from a higher source, because the sourceness of you will say very much different a way of presenting it, where in a sense, what I find when it comes to source, it is not polarized. It basically brings out, this is how it works. This is what you're playing with. If you shift this, and this is what we are choosing to shift, then these are the new ways that you're going to experience your human experience, and the world is going to react this way, and so forth. And it's really giving you a clear view of how it all plays, but it's not saying, and even higher aspects will not say dark, light. It's like, there's the dark, and you're the light. You're the, what are you, a light keeper, or whatever. They have a name for it, like light bearer, a bearer, or something like that. Anyways, they have a lot of names for it. And then what happens is people that become light bearers now are condemning the dark and all that stuff. Well, source essence, the true essence of you, doesn't condemn itself, because all of it is self. Everything is the whole, right? So it says, yeah, we're just playing the polarized game, but you know, and ultimately everything is pure, full spectrum. There is no one is playing one role and one's playing another role. Not one role is better than the other role, because that's polarization, and that is demonizing, and that is again. So if information projects that, then you know it is not of the highest frequency, the highest consciousness and awareness. It has some filters and skews and so forth, which is, again, you know, plays a role. But at some point, if you want to really tune into that, you got to see, am I feeling fear about this? Or now there's personalized fear. For example, you can get absolute truth of how it works, and someone can have a fear-based reaction. But the information is not fear-based. The information is just clear, but you respond fearful because you have a belief system that says, no, it has to be this way. And if it's outside of this way, then we need to fear it because it's got to be wrong. So if you're brought up in religion and you're totally ingrained in the whole idea that these books, this information is the only accurate information, everything else is inaccurate, everything else is the devil, everything else is Satan, everything else is whatever, you know, then you hear the truth and that program kicks in. It's like, no, it doesn't fit in that book. It's got to be bad. And then you have a negative reaction to it. You have fear. I got to run away from this. Like, this is how my family responded to me, is because I spoke outside of what the book said. So they reacted with fear. So they condemned the information, even though the information was not scary. But to them, because the rules, right? So you have to distinguish between the two. Are you reacting because of your programs, or are you feeling, oh, the information is fear-based? You can tell the information is fear-based because it has the right, wrong, good, bad. If you don't do this, this happens to you, and so forth. That is information that is fear-based. But when the information is clear and you react with fear, that's your program responding. That's the difference.
Let's take, for example, information. I many times started conversation about the eternity of the soul and reincarnation, and people go into fear. What is your experience with the base of this fear? And usually I disengage because I understand that this is harmful and people are not really ready for that. What's your
Yeah, I mean, the thing with the whole reincarnation, of course, a lot of people get into fear with that, because in essence, if you're brought up, most of it is religious based or some other programming where you come on the planet, you get one chance, you either do it good or you do it wrong, and then you have to face your maker, you got to face your, you know, your God or whatever it is, and then you get judged, and then you go to an appropriate place. Either you go into some kingdom or you go to some nasty place or something of that nature. And the fact that you reincarnate and you get other chances and so forth, it challenges those beliefs that are being instilled in the training
Okay.
courses and so
Okay.
forth. So that's how they would respond in regards to a
Okay.
fear-based, even though, the
Yes.
information is true that we do reincarnate, and there's more. Like, I couldn't even talk about the entity things because until just a year ago, because people still had this whole idea that entities are all negative. And then when what I would say to people, everybody's got an entity. I'm not talking about the entities that attach to you, that are bodies that left. We're talking about your own entity, which is your own consciousness of a human aspect. We all have one, right? And then
Right.
until people were okay to listen to that, they thought that you were saying that they had an entity and they had to react in fear. Oh my God, get rid of this, type of thing. Because they learned that entities are negative, entities are bad, that nobody can have an entity or anything else. And I'm going, no, that's not the way it works. Yeah, you don't want to attach darker, lower vibration entities that because you're playing in there and they're going to join the party. But you can't get rid of your own entity because that's your reference of being a human and with a name and everything else. It's like your identity card, right? You have a card that says who you are with your picture and everything else. Well, the entity is of your human representation. It's not a card, of course, but it's a human representation of you.
Yes, it's I call it the ego identity. It's very difficult to identify, to define exactly what is the ego identity.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
There's two parts to that. Yes, of course, because you got the ego identity and you have the identity of the pure, human aspect part of it, right? Which basically records the whole experience of being a human body and how it functions, what it feels emotionally, what it tastes, feels, and all that type of stuff. So that, and then of course it has its own characteristics that it brings, skill sets and so forth. Like, for example, we were talking about the Mozart in the other video, where a reincarnation would be an entity reincarnation that had the skills of playing Mozart type of music, and then all of a sudden this that's a protege, somebody that has those similar skills. Well, it's their entity that reincarnated because it has the human skills.
Right. So you answered about fear response to reincarnation. It was mostly earlier programs, right?
Correct.
What about children?
What about children?
Children who remember their previous lifetimes, share with other children, and the other children, let's say I'm speaking about young age, 3 to 5, okay, get into fear.
Okay.
How can we assist those children that get into fear from learning about reincarnation from other children their age, not from programming from other, let's say, adults, teach them about reincarnation?
Well, the thing is, some of the programs are carry over from, past incarnations and stuff like that. For example, some of it may be from a soul-based because it didn't finish learning from that particular experience. Others are coming from the entity. And some of it are just programmed from their mother when they're in their womb, and the interaction from so forth. So they have these fears. And it's not so much the reincarnation part of it. It's more, how can I say it? Trying to find the words for it.
Try Hebrew.
Yeah, I don't have that one. It's the whole concept that, that there's possibilities of having had another life, and even that they have to repeat it or something of that nature, right? So, but then there's other kids that find it comforting because it depends how you share it. Like when I talk to kids and it's about reincarnation, I always say, well, it's really fantastic that we get opportunities to come back and take on different bodies, and we get to have different parents and we have different experiences. And then when we leave, we get to look at all the experiences we had and then decide where we want to go and play next and something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're much more receptive to that because you kind of you present it to them in such a way rather than, oh, I remember being a Viking, or I remember doing this and I was killed and so forth. And I was like, oh my God, they take
Yeah.
that very differently. And then there are kids that have brought up that. And he says, well, I get
Mm.
flashes of me being murdered or
Mm-hmm.
tortured and stuff like that. And I go, yeah, that there's sometimes we carry over memories, but it was not for us to hold on to those memories. It's just to show us that, we played a different role. And look at where you are now. You were tortured in that life, but now you're not tortured in this life. And
Mm-hmm.
now look, you have another life. You have another opportunity to play. So doesn't that make you feel more comfortable than knowing
Mm-hmm.
that no matter how it happens here, you get another chance to play again, and you never get harmed, and you're still here. Look, you have another opportunity. So you're infinite. How doesn't that feel good that you can never die? Okay, you let go of a body
Mm-hmm.
that looks like you died, but you take on another body. You can be in non-form, you are not in the body, and you can go on another planet and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
That's beautiful. It's adventure. And they go, yeah, you're right. And then I relate it to a video game. I go, look, you play one video game, you can play another video game. You can play all types of things. You're always
Mm-hmm.
the one that goes and play. And then they don't respond in fear or apprehension
Beautiful.
about any of that stuff. I go, oh yeah. And
Beautiful.
I've had kids that have looked at it, and it's changed their life to be more adventurous and more instead of being afraid to do anything, they
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be so afraid, because in fact that I won't be harmed. The real me won't be harmed, and I can take on another physicality. Yeah, you're not going to go kill yourself or jump off a
Mm-hmm.
bridge or something like that. But at the same time, it's like, yeah, but you're not going to be so afraid of everything that you do. You're going to give yourself the opportunity to experiment and experience certain things
Mm-hmm.
and so forth. But always knowing that, you don't want to push it too far so that you would have an experience that you may not favor, because you didn't come
Okay.
here just for a short time. You want to be here as long as you can and enjoy every aspect of it. So you kind of shape it in that way, and then they feel good
Nice.
about it.
Okay. Thank you. So you took it into the exploratory path,
Mhm.
and had the experience with one kid that he was really afraid of this story, and I wasn't really as good as presenting it in a adventurous way that as you did.
Yeah, and if
And now,
if a kid comes to you and says, I remember something horrible, and I go, okay, what was so horrible about it? Let's really take a look at it. Sometimes I help them look at it so that in essence that they get a better understanding of what they thought was horrible at that time, and change their viewpoint
mm,
from it just by helping them question a few things. And it's like, and I said, okay, now imagine yourself being there and they're about
mhm,
to torture you. But now you're going to look at it and you're going to say, do I really want to be tortured? And you make the decision that you don't want to be tortured. So now you say to yourself, okay, I don't want to be tortured. And then you walk away. And whatever you're tied down with just disappears, and you can walk
mhm,
away. Because unless you choose to be tortured, you don't have to be tortured, and you have that choice. And so they start imagining that, and they go, wow, I walked away and I feel okay. I get, yeah, see, at that time you didn't want to know that. Now
mhm,
you understand that. And then that whole fear, that whole memory becomes nothing to them again. It's like, oh, okay. And then they're okay with it, and it's gone. And they
mm.
don't even dream about it anymore. They don't go into it, but you give them permission to look at it. So you look at it together. You just guide them through it, right? Uh,
Okay.
that's all. I've always done that with kids, because I've worked with many kids over the years, and adults, of course, because a lot of times the adults still carry stuff from past lives and
Mhm,
memories, and or even phobias. A lot of times we look at the phobias. What is the phobia about? It's from a carryover from either the entity's past life or the
mhm,
soul's past life, right? So we go back and look at where that came, the origin of it came, and then we start changing their viewpoint of it, right? So, you
right.
know, And then when they change the viewpoint of it, then the whole thing changes, and then it carries over to now, and all of a sudden the phobia is gone, and or they're, you know, what they really were so afraid of doesn't feel that afraid anymore. You know, so it's just a
Okay.
matter of looking at it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm not there yet. I might be.
Practice, my friend. Practice, you'll get there.
Okay. I wish to expand and dig into more into how you evaluate. Let's say I am listening to a channeling material,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 95% correct,
Mm-hmm.
and only one sentence is distorted.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And I know that this distortion is about control, taking control or distorting the whole society toward control or fear or whatever. Okay, I was mad at the beginning, but I noticed that in many it's very common that the distortions are kind of sneaked into the teachings,
Mm-hmm.
and probably um, related to later on when the student is starting to question things. And I was mad about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I threw out the bath with the baby.
Right. The bath
Right?
water with the baby. Yep.
And this is kind of, I would call it spiritual muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
How can we assist the beginners who come with question
Mm-hmm.
to develop this muscle, this discernment
Okay.
of what's really helpful to them and what's not? Because for myself, I know, as you said, I feel it, but I want to teach this discernment, this muscle to the evolving spirit.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I say to people all the time, and when that question comes up, I said, you can have 90% skewed information and 10% correct. Or you can have 50-50, or you can have 90% correct and 10% incorrect. I said, whatever resonates with you, whatever makes you think and makes you
Mm-hmm.
expand or something, take. The rest of it, just throw it out. Doesn't matter. Don't say the soup has to have, it's like you make this beautiful soup, and then there's
Mm-hmm.
one little pebble that didn't get washed out of the vegetables. And now you're going to throw the soup for this one pebble. No, you take the pebble, you throw the pebble out, and you enjoy the soup, right? So the thing is, you take whatever is being shared and utilize what resonates with you. The rest of it, disregard it, because a lot of times, even when their stuff is coming through, they may put their opinion in, and you can tell it's their opinion, the opinion of the person that's actually sharing it, because part of their program kicks in. So they're explaining something, and all of a sudden their ego kicks in, and will say one line, for example, or we'll have polarization just at one point. Well, they're saying all these amazing things, and then right at the end or at some point they turn around and say, well, but if you don't do this, this is going to happen to you. And you go, oh, okay, opinion. That's kind of the ego stepping in. That's okay. We take all the rest. It's all good. We use this part, bring it into our reality and so forth, and decipher how much we want to use. And the rest of it, that's fine. Doesn't matter. So, like you said, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. You throw out the bathwater and you keep the baby, right?
Yes.
And I had people, well, I hear a couple of things are really good, but the rest of it is no good. I said, good. Leave the rest alone. Just take the really good parts. Forget about the rest. Don't even give it any thought. Don't judge them by it. Don't, make all of it. Like, for example, there was this one teacher from years ago. um, and he was teaching some stuff. But the thing is, his content was really good. Like, it was pretty accurate. But what happens is then when he wasn't actually coming from a higher perspective, and when you saw his choices, and when he started putting his perspective into it, you knew the perspective was off the mark. So in essence, you go, oh, okay, he's still, got the ego. He's still dealing with this stuff, but I'm not going to disregard all the good stuff that he shared. So in essence, take that stuff, forget about the rest. Don't look at, there's sometimes people that really share really good information, but they don't walk the talk. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're now going to judge them because they don't walk the talk. No, you take what they shared. They may not be ready to even walk that because they're still a work in progress, but the information coming through them is 100%. So take the information, don't worry about the rest of it. And that's always been what I've shared with people all the time. Don't, like you said, don't throw the baby with the bathwater. Just allow whatever the content, the basic stuff or whatever they're sharing. If they don't live it, they don't live it. That's fine. I don't live 100% what I teach, okay? Because I have my few programs that I deal with too. And I'm, tweaking that along the way. And Kimberly is really good at it because she always points out on things and you go, well, what would you be saying to somebody about that right now? And I go, okay, got it, But because in essence, I'm saying something, I'm sharing something, which is profound. And then when I'm living it, sometimes I miss that part and I don't live it 100%. But I catch myself later, but it's like, okay. So in essence, I have to be okay with that with myself too, because we're all a work in progress. We're not all 100% bang on perfect, So we don't take their opinion. I don't give my opinions. I don't like giving opinions because opinions are opinions. They're opinionated based on what
our judgment.
Yeah.
Opinions are judgments.
Yeah. So I don't work there. I share facts and information from a higher perspective, and then I don't give any more than that. And the rest of it doesn't matter. Now, do I have opinions about certain things of what I live my life or whatever it is? Of course I do. But in essence, that's my opinion. And then I don't go telling everybody my opinion. I share only the information that is beneficial for them, not opinions.
So the message I get from this answer is try to distinguish opinions from knowledge.
Correct. And other people's fears, stories, and programs too, because sometimes when they get to that point, they unveil their programs. Right? So in essence, that's their program, whatever it is. I don't need to give power to that part, and that's fine. But still take the content.
Another same question with a flip to positive. Okay, how can I assist people identify empowering information?
How can you teach people?
This information is powerful for you. This is empowering you. Don't go away from this information, so forth. And for people, some people will be powerful, empowering, and some people will be disabling. This depends on where the people stand.
Yeah. So in a sense, when you're communicating with people and so forth, and they say, okay, this information that's come here that is being shared at this point in time, okay. And like you're going to say it the same way. Some people feel empowered by it. Some people feel disempowered by it or something of that nature. And it's okay either way, because both of it will give you the opportunity to learn and gain something out of it, this information.
Yes, that's profound.
Right? So in essence, don't be concerned which way, how you feel about it. Just take the information, see how it all fits into your life and what part of it fits into your life, and start utilizing the parts that fit in. And that's it.
Okay.
And don't over analyze it, don't over question things and so forth. So that's basically the way I would share it. And the thing is, the other thing I would say, if it scares the shit out of you, then at that point in time, it's a good way to look at some programs that are kicking in for you that's trying to keep you locked up or stuck in the old state. So it's another good opportunity for you to look at things.
Okay. So I thought that if something is fearful for me, that means that I'm not ready for it. That I should not engage with it right now, and I'm not ready for it.
Okay. Let me correct that. Let me expand that. Fear is ego-based. Okay? So if you're acting with fear, if you're reacting with fear, you say, why am I so afraid of this information? Because that'll open up a can of worms, because at some point it might show you, well, no, then we can't keep our reality the way it is, or it's going to challenge us, or it's going to make me feel wrong all these years because I believe something else, and so forth. So in essence, fear is a good sign in many ways. It's like, I'm touching a chord. I'm actually going into an area that in some way that my ego is not liking, and maybe I should explore a little bit more because I want to really see what's so scary about this information. Because if you ask yourself the question, why am I afraid of this information? You will get answers. If you keep probing, you'll find, oh, but we were taught this belief. My parents always did it this way, or, or this or that, and then you'll see there's a contradicting story, and it's a program, a belief system. Okay. Now it's not anything about not being ready. Because listen, I have to say something which you'll resonate.
Yes.
You will never hear anything that is one way or another is beneficial for you, even when you react negatively towards it.
I don't resonate.
Okay. Let me explain it better, and then you tell me.
Okay.
You can disagree. I'm not telling you have to agree with me. Okay. So you hear some information and it scares you, or something of that nature. Or you're going to hear information that may be empowering. So any information, the reason it shows up for you, it's to show you one side or the other side. Either it resonates with you, or it shows you.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree with that totally.
Right. So, but if you don't need to hear it, you won't hear it.
Okay.
If you're not ready to hear it, you're not ready to hear it. The thing is, like I had students that years ago came to my courses, and they would say, well, I don't want to hear all this stuff that you're talking about, okay? Because I like the way the world is, or their world, their reality. Yes. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Why are you here? Why are you sitting in this room right now? You knew what I was going to talk about. It was all laid out in the format. And why did you come? Well, I felt guided to come here. I felt very compelled to be here. There's your answer. You needed to hear this information, even though your ego mind is reacting, taking a hissy fit, or anything of that nature, but you needed to be here. All I said was that person sat back down, and this happened many occasions. They sat back down and stayed for the whole 2 days of that whole workshop, and they listened to every part of it. And then at the end, I got a hug from the guy saying, thank you for saying what you're saying, because I realized the more I listened, more it made sense, and more it resonated. And eventually that fear started to dwindle. I said, you're not going to hear. You're not going to go anywhere and hear what you don't need to hear. The reason you hear it is either to trigger a program, to show you something that's there, or to get another level of consciousness, or even if it's just a stepping stone to get you moving. So unless you don't need it, you won't hear it.
Okay, let me share with you a drama I had with my eldest daughter.
Okay.
I started speaking about dark forces and their essence, and she got very afraid. And she told me that she wished that we do not mention and do not speak about those issues, because it brings her to fear. It arise lots of fears in her, okay? And she believes that her thoughts creates, and she doesn't want to manifest those thoughts in her life.
Okay.
So she prefer not to think and not to bring those even issues to her life.
Okay. Perfect.
And I respect that, even though it's coming from fear, it's recognized and acknowledged fear.
Right. Now that's fine. So now she knows she doesn't want to hear that, but she heard it, and it stimulated more for her that, okay, I don't want to entertain that part of it right now because I'm not ready, but I know it's there. So the seed was planted, not disregarding it or trying to create la la land in her mind, saying, oh, everything's good, everything is good, because everything is good, but you're not going to look at there are other aspects of polarity that are still playing out. Not that you have to give power to it, but in essence, it's a sensitive thing for her because whatever it is. But if she did not need to hear it and even respond the way she responded, you wouldn't have said it, and she wouldn't have been there when you said it anyways. So she needed to hear it. Even though she's not ready to acknowledge it, you said what you had said, she heard what she heard, and at some point that's going to be beneficial one way or another because she's going to come to realize, oh, okay, there's more, something I need to address. Because I've had that same thing with other kids in our family dynamics, not so much about the dark forces, but other situations. It's like, no, I don't want to know that, and they get all upset, and to the point where because I'm breaking their bubble or whatever it is, and I didn't even say anything. I just said, well, you need to look at this side of it too, because why is all of this happening? What are our beliefs around that, and what are we collectively agreed upon, and so forth, right? But they rejected the whole thing, and that was fine. And she reacted and didn't talk to me for like weeks, because she was afraid I was going to say something. But a year later, she's talking about the same thing to other people, and it's like, oh, so you got on? He says, yeah, I got over it, and I'm now looking at it, and yeah, it makes sense. That seed had to be planted, even though she reacted negatively. It's funny because this one stepdaughter, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Don't want to hear it. But if you actually listen to her talking to her friends, she's repeating exactly what you have talked to her as advice to her friends. The part that she didn't want to hear from you, from me, per se, she's now giving that advice, exact same words, to her friends, right? I don't say anything because I know that she just didn't, it made her uncomfortable, but she knew that the information was valuable, and now she's sharing it with friends. That's it. You have to understand that it's like, oh, don't take for fact whatever their initial reaction. If they don't want to hear it, you respect that part. Say, okay, you're not ready to hear it right now. I mean, what was said because you need.
I was respectful.
Yeah.
I was respectful.
But you didn't do anything wrong by saying it, and then the fact of her reaction just kind of proved that, okay, she's got a sensitive spot there, and that's fine. But you planted the seed regardless.
I like your approach, that I also adopt this approach, that whatever happens is perfect. It was meant to be happen, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't happen.
Correct. And you look at anything that's happened in your life where you at one point said this was horrible, and then something amazing develops from it, or made you question things and take you a different direction, or look at the world differently just because of that. If it didn't come in, this is why I say to people all the time, Duty, forget about the past. Don't even bring it up. It's whatever it was. You did not make a mistake. There's no such thing. You made choices based on the consciousness you had at the time for what you needed to experience at that time, because you wouldn't have made that choice if it wasn't beneficial based on then. Of course, you look at it now, you're a very different person, very different energy, and you're going to look at that and you're going to say, oh, why did I make that choice? But that's now. At that time, even though there was two choices, you can only see one. The other one just didn't look feasible. Then you had some negative reactions or something of that nature. And you're going to say, oh, that was a bad choice. I should have gone with this one. And I screwed up. Well, no, you took that choice because that choice was the one that taught you the most. That's the one that gave you the experiences you needed. That's the only
Okay.
reason I made that choice.
Thank you. That's a profound answer. Thank you.
Sure.
What about the same issue? What about survivor's guilt? People who, let's say, you know what survivor's guilt is?
No, explain.
People who participate in some accident or horrible event in battle, for instance,
Right.
and the soldier next to them blown up, and they had no scratch.
Right.
It was their best friend. Or
Right.
people who were in the car was totally smashed. The one next to them has died, and they went out with, let's say, broken leg or something like that, and they were fine. And the rest of their life, they live with guilt.
Mm.
Why that person was hurt or died, and I was not. Even if he didn't die, let's say he was maimed,
Mm-hmm.
crippled.
Right. Right.
I call that survival guilt.
Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you for explaining that, because I didn't really know what that was. I never heard that before. But I know what you're saying. I've understood that, and I've heard other people go through that, but I didn't have a name for it. Survival guilt. That's a good one. I have to keep that in mind. Anyways, yeah, because the understanding is that a situation occurred, and they were spared, and their friend wasn't spared. So or family member or anything of that nature. So now they feel guilty that they lived. I lived that myself. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
For a little while. My
Mm-hmm.
human aspect of it had that little guilt. I'm an identical twin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? I have a twin
Okay.
brother. My twin brother died 2 weeks before we were born.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the same womb. And when I came out, sometime later, I realized that I felt bad that he died, I'm alive. That was a very human experience or program
Mm-hmm.
that was coming in that I adopted. My higher
What age
self
were you? What
when
were you?
when I realized
Yes.
it, okay,
Yes.
I realized it at early, but I did not vocalize it or feel it until I was
Okay.
around 2 years old. I started to, because I had the memory. I remembered him being with me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I remember talking to him telepathically, of course, from
Mm-hmm.
that. I had those recollections, and he said he had to go. He couldn't stay. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
he was only keeping me company. And now it was for me to go on. And the other thing is, my parents knew they were going to have two boys. And so they picked
Mm-hmm.
two names. So what accentuated the guilt is I got both names. So I have two
Okay.
first names. And when I was there at that point, I asked my mother. She didn't want to tell me because she said she didn't expect me to know that I had a twin brother.
Wow.
Because how do you know? You weren't born yet. You were just in the womb. You were sharing the same womb. But I knew because I had the communication and so forth and so forth. Eventually, I challenged her and I said, why did you give me both names? It goes, what do you
At
mean?
what age?
This was around a little bit after 2 years old.
Okay.
It was closer to 3 when I had that conversation with my mother. And I mean, she was startled at the fact that I brought that up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, how did you know? I go, yeah, I know, because I was communicating with him, And but then you gave me his name too. He says, well, yeah, we had picked two names and we didn't know what name to give you now because we liked both names. And since your brother wasn't going to use the name, we gave you both. So my name is Franco Mark DeNicola, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and so forth. Anyways, so I did carry that for a while. But then the higher consciousness started kicking in, and I came to the realization, okay, yeah, he made the agreement that he wasn't supposed to come here and stay with me because in my mind, it was perfect. You got a twin brother. He probably has the same level of consciousness. At least I have somebody to communicate with rather than,
right.
with people that don't understand anything. There's two of us. That would be great. But no, didn't happen. So So I'm familiar with that guilt that I survived and he didn't. I had to clear that. I had to let that finally go, and that didn't go till much later in my life. I was in my teens before, because I didn't realize that I was still carrying fragments of it. And one day I was having a conversation with somebody, and I felt emotionally charged about it. And I go, "Oh, this is not totally gone." Okay, so I had to work through it and let that go. So this whole survival thing, what I say to people when they are dealing with that, and say, listen, there's no accidents, okay? Yes, you were involved, you got hurt, but they died, okay? Or the fact that, you went on the same battlefield and whatever happened, they checked out. Nobody leaves unless they agree to. Now, the only reason they left in that fashion was the fact of, okay, I'm done with my experience. It would be best if I leave this way, because that way it gives an opportunity for various people to feel a certain way and react with their program, so they can look at it. Look at you, you're feeling guilty. That's a program, because realistically, from a deeper perspective, there's a perfection in that. They wanted to leave. It's not like you made a mistake, or that you were standing in the wrong spot and they died and you didn't, and whatever it is, or that you were the driver and then, like my cousin had that same
Yes.
experience. She was driving the car. She got T-boned. Her friend was sitting in the passenger seat, got killed instantaneously. She lived. She went through depression. She went through all types of things for quite a few years. And I talked to her a few times. Eventually, she let it go, because she would, first of all, didn't want to ever get in a car again, because she felt that was a weapon for murder. Second of all, was that she felt that it was her fault, because she should have paid attention that somebody didn't do the stop sign. Third, she felt, that guilt thing that you were talking about, survival guilt, is that, why did my best friend have to die? I was driving and I'm survived, and it's not fair, type of thing, all that other stuff. So she had to get through all of that. And, again, after a few years of letting that go, she's fine. I mean, it's all gone for her and everything else. But in essence, that's the program, the fact of understanding. And her case was too, even though she was very religious, and I used that card with her. I said, well, you have to understand, your belief is that God takes people at certain times. I just used those words because of the fact that that's what she understood, because she wasn't ready to understand what I would say.
Yes.
So, but I did still say, we all have the choice to leave, right? But sometimes we don't believe that, but we have to also understand, we believe that God actually dictates who comes and goes. And do you think God, in her case, chose one over the other? Is God said, okay, I need you home. You need to move on. You don't have to have the human experience anymore. Let's go on, right? And you still had to be here, right? So don't feel bad that you're here to play the game, right? So now, eventually, of course, as she became more mature, because she was only in her early 20s at the time. Now she has a deeper understanding. Yeah, okay, she left. She needed to leave, and whatever, it was the way it played out, and I don't have to feel guilty for it. So she doesn't feel guilty anymore around that now. But so it's really, let them understand, listen, yes, it's true. They left, you're not, and you didn't get hurt. Well, you didn't need that experience. They did. They wanted that experience. They agreed that experience. I know it's hard for the mind to accept that. I understand that, because the mind is going to say, no, that's not possible. How could they have made the agreement? They wanted to live. But that's a mind's perspective. But when you're looking at a higher self, soul perspective, it's very different. A soul perspective is, I come in, I play, I get what I need to do, and I leave. It's very easy, because then it goes and chooses another play, another body, another experience, and so forth. For the soul, it's very easy. The entity is the same thing. It's very easy. It comes and goes. It's no problem. But the ego mind doesn't see it that way. The ego mind sees life, death. I'm here. I'm not here. It's unfair because I don't get to move on, and all that stuff. So you just need to understand that part of it, because that plays a role too.
But for me to understand that, it's obvious. I understand that. The challenge for me to explain is the soul game.
Mhm.
Some people, let's say the person who is hurt with a survivor guilt, okay, is not carrying his belief in the soul's game
Mhm.
and soul's evolution. Sometimes they are religious, sometimes they are not. And I don't know if sometimes I don't allow myself to get involved. I understand what's going on. I feel that I don't allow myself to intervene and provide any comfort, depending on the spiritual maturity of the person. But if I say I am not mature and this person is not mature enough spiritually, I cannot speak with him about souls and so forth.
Mhm.
Okay, I would say, okay, go have counseling or something that a psychiatrist or a psychological consultant, so forth. What would be your suggestion?
Okay, in a situation when I see that somebody's not ready to hear about the soul part, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what I share with them and say, listen, we all have certain experiences, and what happens is that, regardless how we see it, they were there where they needed to be. That situation occurred, and your situation occurred very differently. You're having different
Mm-hmm.
experiences. It's like anything in life. Some person likes sports, some person doesn't like sports. Somebody wants to do one activity, another one does another activity. One sees the world one way, another one sees the world another way. So in essence, it's the same
Right.
thing with life and death. In the sense is they came here, they had whatever experiences they had, and then it came to the point where, things got organized so that they would leave. So they left. You can't say it's somebody's fault or you could have changed it or anything of that nature. It's just the fact that, that goes the way it goes. It's the same thing with you. If a situation happens where you die or something of that nature, that happens. Okay, it's not okay. Should I be very careful every step I take because I don't want to die? You could be afraid that way, but in essence, you're only going to have the experience that you really need, or you're ready for, or that you need to have because you're ready to move to another level of something. So I make it very
Mm-hmm.
basic. I don't even bring the soul aspect of it. I go, now if you focused on the idea that we come and go as we need to come and go, and the circumstances around it doesn't really matter. Is that more comforting than knowing that, okay, we have no say in whatever is going on and we just die and whatever else, and then we have to feel bad for the person?
Mm-hmm.
And they understand, well, no, it feels better that, they left. And I go, look at it this way. When you die, you don't have suffering. When you die, you don't have, the challenge of life. You don't have to go to work every day. You don't have to go to school. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
do all this other stuff that,
Mm-hmm.
may be important to some people, but for them, it's like, no, I done it, tried it. I'm done with this. I'm okay leaving,
Mm-hmm.
They may have not specified it. They don't even think about it, but at some level that they decided that. So that's the only reason. I said, there are no accidents, we look at it as an accident because we didn't know that it was going to happen, or
Mm-hmm.
that we didn't plan it. And
Mm-hmm.
because how do you plan a departure unless you're planning a suicide, and then you plan a
Yeah.
suicide? But the fact that you're successful or unsuccessful in a suicide is not really planned. You plan for it, but then what happens to it is still, it just takes whatever course it takes. So you just make them feel comfortable with that, and just give them the two scenarios. Okay, so let's imagine the fact that they made the agreement to leave. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and that the last thing they want you to do is to feel guilty, to feel responsible, to feel that you got the better deal. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I play around with it depending on where there is, and I go, okay, now imagine this. Who's got the better deal? You're here, you're living life every day. You're going to
Mm-hmm.
school, you're going to work, and you got
Yeah.
to deal with the family, you got to deal with money, you got
Yeah.
to deal with other stuff, and they don't have to
Yes.
deal with any of that. Who's got the better deal? Oh, I didn't look at it that way. Yeah, I guess it's easier for them. I go, absolutely. So I said, they didn't want to go through the whole thing. That's okay. And when you
Okay.
play with it, this is,
Different perspective.
yeah, it just changes everything for them.
Different meanings, different meaning to death,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's, we can share and explore different meanings of life and death, and from that induce what perspective we want to adopt,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So
See,
it's
we don't. Mhm.
expand the ideas, expand the perspective, many perspectives, and then choose the perspective that suits and serves.
Yes. Yes,
Right.
exactly. And we don't have to get spiritual with anybody if they're not
Right.
even ready for that. So, I do consulting work. I mean,
Right.
I do sessions as a facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's, we can talk like we're talking. No way. There's people that come, with their beliefs and
Mm-hmm.
whatever else. And then we just play with the program. I've had people say, well, you play with people's minds. I go, yeah,
Yeah.
because that's the computing part, right? you
Right.
know you're less spiritual than others, because others are all spiritual stuff, this and that, and you bring hard facts, like information that I
Yes.
can digest and so forth. I go, yeah, because there's all aspects of it. So depending on what the person's coming in for,
Mm-hmm.
I play the game accordingly that they can understand. So I'll turn it around in such a fashion so that they can actually understand it. It's not that I'm going to give them any incorrect information. I give them always correct information, but I just put a different viewpoint of how to explain it to them and how they can actually relate
Mm-hmm.
with it. And that's all. So it's the same thing. With kids, I talk one way. With adults, I talk another way, and so forth. Like when kids are having a tough time, depending on what they're going through, I go, okay, let's take a look at it. Let's see it in a fun way. Let's see it how, well, I don't see it as fun. And I go, okay, well, let's play with this. What's happening? Well, I come in, people yell at me, and I say, okay, imagine, now let's envision seeing these people yelling at you right now. But this time I want you, while they're yelling at you, I'm going to be right next to you, and we're going to smile at them. We're going to smile at them and watch them just like a little cartoon, laughing, or like a cartoon yelling, and see how you
Mm-hmm.
feel about that. And they're looking at, and they have their eyes closed and they're imagining, and then they start smiling. And they go, yeah, it sounds ridiculous, and they sound like Mickey Mouse or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you
Right.
take that charge down, and then we play with it. Okay, what's bothering you about when they're yelling or something like that? And then we look at their
Mm-hmm.
program and so forth. So I shape it based on what they can understand and what they can acknowledge, right?
Okay. Okay.
Sometimes you have to throw a couple of feelers in, and say, okay, let's play with this. Okay, they're not getting that, so let me reword it. Give you an example. A couple of weeks ago, I had a gentleman, and I did a session with him. First
Mm-hmm.
time I had a session with him, his wife sent
Mm-hmm.
him to me. And because the wife is all into following my work for years, the husband wants
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with it. But anyways, he's having a
Mm-hmm.
challenge, right?
Okay.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I presented something to him of what was happening, right? So I said, okay, this is your program. This is what you're dealing with because you're responding this way. And he's going, no, 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 I'm not, I don't have that problem. I don't have that program. I don't believe in any stuff, right? And I didn't say nothing spiritual, nothing, because I knew what I
Mm-hmm.
was dealing with, right?
Yeah.
So I
Right.
said, okay, did this ever happen to you? And then I started to explain the situation and so forth. And I just reworded it a little bit different and go, oh yeah, that happens to me all the time. And
Mm-hmm.
it's going, I said the same thing, just changed it around and gave him an example. And it's like, oh yeah, that happens all the time. Bingo, we got in. He saw that there was a program. Because at first it was like, no, 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 I deny it. There's no way. That never happened to me. But meanwhile, I could see it in his mind, how he thought,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm used to dealing with people
Right.
for all these years. But
Right.
he couldn't see it until I presented it to him differently. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
So that's how you do it with people. You have to kind of play with them, see
Uh,
whatever.
I'm not there yet. It takes 30 years of experience, as you said.
Well,
And
it's moving a lot faster now. You don't need 30 years of experience.
and I said I am a spiritual teacher in training, you're a spiritual teacher in action. And and I still have a long way to grow. And I think this is a great point to end this discussion and prepare for the next one.